My name is Holly Broman. I'm a children's librarian at the Central Library, and today we're going to be talking about books with babies. It's part of our Raising a Reader series that takes part every month. And if you have any questions throughout, then you can put them in the chat if you'd like, or the Q&A section is great for just more so for me to track whether or not it's gotten answered. But we are wanting some collaboration from you. If you have any questions, we want this to be relevant to everybody who's attending. So we love our babies at Santa Barbara Public Library. We absolutely adore having them at our stay and play programs, which is mostly what you see in these pictures, but also our Baby and Me, which is that middle picture. And of course, they're checking out materials with their parents and caregivers here all the time. So I wanted to ask what made you interested in attending Books with Babies, and what do you most want to know? I'm just going to give a couple seconds, not really, maybe closer to 30 seconds for you to put something in the chat if you have something on your mind that you would like us to address at some point during this. Don't want to move too quickly so that people have a chance to type. I really love how this baby here on the right is using the magnetiles to look through. That's something that babies are developing a lot, is their vision. So it's really a cool thing that he held it very close up to his eye to look through. And then of course, shaker eggs are a great toy for babies too. So I like these pictures as examples of great toys for babies. And here's something in the Q&A. Oh, chat is disabled. Okay, thank you for telling me. But let me enable it. Well, I'm not seeing that. So I guess it just has to be in the Q&A that you put any questions. Get into baby development. There's a lot of developing happening during the first year of life, right? And that's what we think primarily about when we think of babies. After that, they start becoming a little bit more of toddlers. They have a lot of different sections. So we're going to start with social. And so you can usually expect a smile around a 2-month mark. Obviously, it's different for different babies, but that's around when the milestone occurs. Attachment is also a big social thing that's happening throughout this time with the primary caregivers in the baby's life. So they'll be learning that they can rely on their caregiver, and they'll be feeling positive, happy feelings about their caregiver most of the time. So the object permanence is part of that relationship too, though. As they start developing that around 7 months, then they're going to start understanding that their caregiver is going to come back when they leave, and that they'll also start developing some stranger anxiety around this time. This is partially because they're becoming really good at recognizing faces, but it's also just a feeling of the attachment with the caregiver, and the big world that they're starting to understand is super big. And, stranger anxiety is normal. It does start to go away as they become more acclimated to being around others. The other part of social development around now is causality. So they, around 9 months, will start doing the cause and effect type of things. Maybe you'll have some toys like Jack in the Box style, or push a button and make a noise kind of toys. And those are great for playing in this way, but they're also going to be social creatures in a causality sort of way. Like they'll make a noise and notice that every time they make that noise, and they get a reaction. And so they'll make that noise again and again, or they'll drop their food on the ground and notice every time that you pick it up. And so they'll do it again and again because they're testing out causality. Then another part of all of it is their sounds and their words. they're developing that motor control of their tongue and also starting to hear things around them and want to try to copy them, right? Around 1 month, then they can mostly just gurgle and cry. And then around 5 months, you start hearing more varieties of sounds that might be cooing when they're happy, or just kind of different ooh, ah, ee sort of noises. Even when they're crying earlier at the 1 month mark, then there usually is some distinctions between like the different types of cries. So you can start finding ways to communicate with your baby while they're nonverbal, just to be able to narrate what they mean and meet their needs. Sometimes it might be a sharper cry when they're hungry versus a lower key cry when they're tired. It's different maybe for a different baby, but I've heard that they generally have something in common for certain needs. The other thing to keep in mind around this time is that you could start doing some baby sign. That's a great way to practice some language with them before they're verbal. 10 months is the time when they're going to start copying the sounds that they hear in your speech. So when you're saying food or milk, then maybe they'll say back to you, ooh, ee, kind of noises that sound similar to what you are saying. And they'll kind of start to notice conversational patterns and be able to participate in the back and forth. 15 months is usually when they can start learning words. This doesn't mean that these words are going to sound exactly like how they sound for a fully developed person, right? When they are learning, they have a lot of different things to do. When they're saying milk, then they have to be able to make a noise along with a k noise and a l noise, and that's a lot of different positions for your tongue. And so they're obviously going to be able to develop those at a different pace, and it's not going to always be easy to know what they mean at first, but as you learn their little language, then you will know. And like, if it doesn't sound exactly like the word, that doesn't mean that it isn't a word. So 5 words is including words that don't sound exactly like what you would expect. The 20-month mark is around the time that you can start noticing sentences. They're usually only 2-word sentences of like want, ball, those sorts of things that they are able to start communicating, of like no milk, like, or something like that, they will just be able to put those things together. And then it is around that time that their vocabulary is growing by leaps and bounds. It's usually 10 times of what it was back at the 15-month mark, which is just wild to think of how quickly that grows. So when we get to the vision part of it, this is something that I think of a lot when I'm reading with little ones, of like, how close do I need to hold the book to them? Because around the young times, right, birth to about 3 months, or 5 months even, then they are not really seeing color. They're not really able to see very far from their face. So yes, it's around 8 to 10 inches from their face that they can focus on around birth. And then it's around 3 months that they can start following moving objects. That means that their eyes track pretty well. And then they have full color vision, 3D, and can start focusing on farther away objects around 5 months. So that would be a good time to start checking out all sorts of different books and having that typical kind of lap time, story time with them, where you have the book out in front of both of you. And you have a lot to choose from during that time, because there's so many colorful books out there. And then we have our physical development 2 months is usually around the head and neck control time. So you can start relying on them to be able to support their head a little more. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't still hold them carefully. But that's around the time they start being able to hold their head up. 4 months old is when they're going to be able to grab at things and shift them between their hands. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to easily grab things that are small, but large items. 6 months is when they'll start sitting up. So this is great for them to be able to start looking around at what they want to look at and explore their world in a different way. Before that, then, it's kind of dependent on how you sit them, how you lay them. At 6 months, they can start looking around and sitting up where they want to. And at 9 months, then that pincer grasp, which allows them to pick up smaller items, starts developing. That is very fine motor control. And it is what you really need for later in life when you are learning how to write, which is very important. So around that time, around 9 months, giving them things like tweezers or small handled objects are great for practicing those grips. And they'll also be pulling up and crawling around that time. So even more exploring and learning about the world. First steps and waving and clapping happen around 12 months, which is kind of all social and exploratory and so exciting when that happens. Not mentioned within this physical thing is how much babies use their mouth during all this time to learn, but we'll talk about that in regard to board books. The touch points I wanted to talk a little bit about, because this is something that pediatricians keep in mind, but a lot of libraries also keep in mind in serving young families, is these touch points that happen. That basically means that there's growth, but there's also some interesting, like, hard things happening. Often a spurt of growth in one area means a regression in another area, and development is messy. So professionals want to help, and touch points was developed in a way to try to help professionals help. That was repetitive, but the ideal baby is the first stage, and that is when you are pregnant with a baby and you are imagining what your life will be like, what the baby will be like. So that is one thing that starts to happen first. Usually during this phase, there's a lot of preparation and excitement, but there could also be some nerves. The real baby is when you have given birth and you are starting to learn your baby and see their personality and create your new routines and all of that. Around 3 months old is usually when the energy sink is observed by pediatricians. That is more to do with parents than the child. Some of these have to do with the child, some of these are to do with the parent. The energy sink is really starting to feel like, wow, this has been a lot. Like maybe it was more than what I was idealizing. And you start to have a little bit of a moment of being a little overwhelmed, maybe, right? And that's really normal, and that's something to be prepared for. And then after that, usually around, I think, 5 months is the rewarding baby period, where you really start to feel like you've developed that relationship with your baby. You understand each other. You're feeling how amazing being a new parent is, and you're in that phase. That doesn't mean it's like perfect times, but it's beautiful, rewarding time. Learning how to sleep through the night is something that's happening during all of this, but I think usually around 7 months is the phase that, because they're learning so many things outside of sleep, then sleep becomes a little bit more difficult. So that's that phase. And then closer to like 9 months, then the pointer phase starts happening, which means that the baby is noticing things and pointing to things, and moms and dads and other caregivers are really talking with their baby about what they see in the world and able to really have joint focus on things and label things, and that baby is constantly looking around and noticing their world. Then we want to talk about introducing books to babies. Of course, we're here to talk about books with babies. So when you are reading books with a baby, then you want it to be fun, and you want to set up the baby to know that books are fun by keeping books in their play space. Now, depends on what your home is like, what that play space is going to be. But it should have some books that are board book style, maybe cloth books that are low to the ground and easy for your baby to get to in order to treat them like toys. And treating a book like a toy will mean mouthing that book, but that's the way for them to learn while they're young, is putting things in their mouths, among other things. And you'll want to create a routine. So what that looks like will be different for everyone. It can sometimes mean reading right before bath time, or maybe reading during bath time. It's what you notice works well for your baby, whether they are able to cuddle with you and listen, or if they need to be constantly moving around. And that is what it is. Babies, when they're really young, won't be moving around much, but you want to create an environment that is easy for them to listen and take part and see the pictures. When you're looking at the book, then you can point to things on the page, and that includes the text on the page sometimes. You want to be able to point to things while you read them, right? The text is different than the picture, and one way to point that out is to run your finger along what you're reading. Babies are young to catch on to that, but the sooner you get those routines in place of doing those sorts of things, like the easier it'll be once they start getting older, and you'll all be primed to start learning what text is. And then you talk about how their life relates to the book. You might have lots of puppies in your house, or you might just have a lot of plants in your house, and you could talk about what's in the book that you also have in your house or in your neighborhood. And like family members, all of that, you can find books about and talk about how that relates to their own life. You'll want to have them interact however they can. This keeps them engaged for longer. If that means that they are touching things on the book, or if they are helping you turn a page once they're able, that's great. Even if they skip some pages, that is fine. We want them to be having a positive experience. And they, at this age, below 1 year, they don't really understand a plot structure anyway. Most board books don't have much plot, so skipping some pages is fine. You'll definitely see babies wanting to read things over and over, but it's not just a thing that is innate to like comfort and familiarity. It's also just important for learning to be able to read things over and over. Like, you'll learn the words more quickly if you hear them again and again. Stopping when you're not having fun, right? Like, this is important for your mental health, but also for baby to have a love for reading. You want to be instilling that books are fun. So if you're having a moment, they're having a moment, you don't want that associated with a book. So you can move on. When you're reading, there are some things that you can expect based off of how old your baby is. Around 0 to 6 months, then they'll just be listening, and those books that you've read over and over again, you could see actually being quite comforting to your baby. So if they've been having a rough day and they just won't go down to sleep, then maybe you could read them something that they're really familiar with, and they'll calm down and finally go to sleep. the possibility. At 6 to 8 months, then babies start exploring the books and they're able to start seeing a lot better around this age, right? It's around 5 months that they develop better vision, that color vision, that further out vision. So at this point, they'll be able to see more, and they'll also be having some more motor control. So they'll be able to reach out and grab things and touch things and point at things a little more. They'll definitely be interested in things that are bright and colorful. So picking out books like that. Around 9 to 11 months, then you'll see that they may have chosen their favorite picture books. They may want to just go straight to where you keep the books and pull them down and show you. And that's a great invitation to start a story time whenever. You can also have them help turn the pages. As we talked about, they may skip some still, but they'll be getting that pincer grasp a little under control around this time. So it's a great practice of that to turn board book pages. 12 to 18 months is when they'll start kind of pretend reading. This is a time that imaginary play kind of does start anyway, but they also are going to be copying things that they see you doing. So if you sit down and read, they may go grab a book and sit down and read too. They will just be able to flip through pages on their own and enjoy looking at the pictures. And it's really cute when kids do this. Around 24 to 36 months, then they can start understanding the stories and anticipate what comes next. So this is when some plot actually starts to happen for them. And it's going to be things that are still pretty simple, of like the dog jumped out from behind a bush and now what kind of thing. But it is something that, like, if they've read the book before, then they might be able to tell you before you turn the page, or even if it's just a predictable story, they might say what they think. Then these are things that we keep in mind for the pre-reading skills that kids need. Most of these are not ones that we focus on too much with babies, but they are all important to learning how to read. So picking out books for your collection that help reinforce these are important. Most books will, but print awareness basically is understanding the difference between text on a page and pictures on a page, like we talked about, like being able to point out where the text is. And print motivation is having those positive feelings towards reading. Phonological awareness we'll pull out and talk a little bit more about, but that one is one we talk with young parents about during our Baby and Me classes, because it is something that means basically breaking down the words into their sounds, which reading is great for, singing is great for. And vocabulary is learning all those words. As we know, babies are learning a lot of words. Their skills in speaking are growing slowly, but the more you talk to them, the more words they hear, the more quickly they'll have a large vocabulary. And the narrative skills is that plot structure, but also understanding setting, characters, all of that. So this narrative skills is maybe the most advanced. Letter knowledge is knowing your ABCs, understanding the alphabet and all the letters in it and what they look like. So print awareness is one that we focus on when reading with babies, even though they aren't necessarily going to be able to read along with you, then hopefully they can start noticing the difference between the characters, like the pictures, all that, and the text on a page. So giving them a chance to look at the book and see what you're pointing to while you're reading, and also getting them engaged in all of that. It does also mean understanding how you're supposed to hold a book. There is like a front and a back cover. There is a right side up and an upside down. There is the fact that you have to turn the pages. So all of that is also part of print awareness, of understanding how a book is meant to be used, which is going to slowly develop. Babies mostly use books as toys at first and don't necessarily care whether they're holding them upside down. But when they are holding it upside down, once they start being more conversational with you, a fun way to do this learning is to be like, oops, that's upside down, he, and laugh together about it and turn it right side up. It's just a positive, fun way to start pointing out that there's an upside down for books. The phonological awareness is a really important skill. It actually is one of the biggest things that influences vocabulary development. Besides them just hearing a ton of different words, it's the understanding of all those parts of the word that allows them to be able to speak those words. So this means like the and the and the L and all those different noises that we make every day. Sometimes if you're a fast talker, for a baby, that all blends together. So slowing down your speech with babies is great. Having a little bit of a higher pitch also draws their attention. And singing is a very natural way to do these things. Songs have tempo, so it's natural to slow down when singing. Even if it's a fast song, usually there's some words in it that are drawn out because it has a whole note there, you know? So slowing down songs by singing is a great way to get children to be able to hear the parts of words. There's also making noises like an animal or a car. That's a fun way to practice making noises together. Those like are word noises. It's just in the real environment. So they'll relate it to something that they like if they like cars or if they like their puppy. And then we also want to play around with rhymes. That's another way to increase phonological awareness. A lot of young books are rhyming. It's just a really attractive thing to young kids. They listen to the lilting noise really easily, but it's also important for their learning. You can create little games of playing around with sound, and it will all increase their understanding of this. All right, I'm going to take a little break to look at the Q&A section real quick. And if you have anything that I've said that you were like, oh, I didn't quite understand that, this is a good chance to put that in. Trying to fit a lot in, but we are moving at a good rate. When you're choosing books for babies, these are a few things that they love. Brightly colored pictures of simple objects. So sometimes these are things around the house. Sometimes these are things in nature. We want it to just be colorful and clear outlines. And it's just things that they're interested in. You can usually tell pretty early what that is. You also want to pick out books that have simple text. Sometimes you want a story simply because, I mean, as an adult, then stories are a little bit more fun to read than just labeling objects. But there are a lot of great books that are just labeling objects for kids, and that's really valuable too. A lot of stories are rhyming for this age, as I said, and a lot of them have a repetitive language, like kind of almost call and response style. So that is something to look for as well. You want it to be sturdy. There's some indestructible books out there, that's a brand name, that are really fun if you need something to be able to travel with. They're really lightweight and they're dishwasher safe. Board books are a standard as well as cloth books. You're going to be looking to introduce some concepts to young babies, and this includes transportation, letters, animals, colors, shapes, counting, all sorts of concepts that they need to learn to be school ready. That's not for a few years, but you want to start introducing things so they have that background knowledge. Now, we talked about them not yet fully being able to understand a plot structure at this age, so they're going to want low plot stories, that it's more about your relationship with the character. It's more about just labeling objects, maybe lifting the flap like we have in this next bullet point. We want things to be less about this happens and then this happens, and more just about I like this character, I like this baby's face, and just paying attention to the pictures, paying attention to the vocabulary. When they lift the flap, then that's a chance for them to keep on practicing their object permanence, and also a chance for them to work on their motor skills because they are helping lift that flap maybe. And then there's, of course, babies are very interested in faces. Other babies' faces are especially interesting to babies. So pictures with other babies' faces and pictures with mirrors are really, really fun for babies. So those are things to look forward to. Ooh, I have a question about recommendations for books for parents to read about literacy and teaching kids to read. I know that we have a section on that in the adult nonfiction. I, off the top of my head, cannot think of a favorite title for that, but I could absolutely look into that and get back to you if you want to chat me your email. And then teaching the alphabet as the other part of that question. And I think that's repetition. That is totally just repetition. Singing the song is great because songs do help a lot with remembering things, but you also want them to see the letters. So reading books that have the alphabet in them, and just having little worksheets that there's so many of them online that you can just print off that allow you to trace. We also, as part of our library of things, we do have some Montessori wooden tracing boards, and that's a great toy if you want to look into that. There's ones that are just shapes, but there are also those Montessori boards that are the full alphabet, and so that's a great way for them to get the kinesthetic learning of like moving while they're doing it, as well as seeing it visually, what it looks like. And of course, while your baby is playing, then you can always narrate what they're doing and tell them that they're tracing the A. The tips for talking and singing with babies. I was talking about being a narrator just now. That is basically noticing what they are noticing and noticing what they are doing and saying that out loud so that they can have the words to associate. Whatever they are looking at, you can tell them what that object is. Whatever action that they're doing, you can tell them what it is. We have a lot of action songs as part of Baby and Me because that's something that is an easy way to get babies to learn the meaning behind words, is by doing what you're saying. And it's just a fun song too, a lot of the time. Sing-song word like tones draws attention to each sound in a word. And speaking slowly. And then we want to give everybody a chance to play games, including babies, right? They're great at back and forth games, and that really helps them get ready to have conversations even, because it's back and forth the same way that a conversation is when you roll a ball or you copy each other's silly noises. It's taking turns and going back and forth. Singing songs with babies, it's not about being on key. It's actually more important to have some rhythm, but even if you're not perfect with that, that's okay. Is one thing about rhythm is that it's really helpful for babies learning how to walk if they develop some rhythm. So bouncing baby gives them a feeling that they'll have when they're walking, very similar up and down, right? And you have to walk at a certain pace. So having rhythm helps with that. And repeating songs and phrases gives them a chance to memorize them, to learn them. I've heard some recommendations before. I think when we did a baby sign class, our baby sign teacher was like, I don't use the word no with my babies or toddlers because if I don't use it, they don't repeat it. So if there's a phrase that you want to have repeated, that's what you want to say to your baby all the time, is phrases you want to hear. And I mean, if you're okay with your baby saying no to you, that's totally fine. That was just an example of a way that he found to hear less no's from his toddler, is to just, find other ways to say basically no instead. We will be doing this right now. The baby song lyrics here are just some of my faves from Baby and Me. And they serve some different purposes. So hippopotamus on the bus is great for learning rhythm, but as you can see, then we're also practicing the ba noise for a sheep and a moo noise for a cow. It's really a cute and fun song. You're doing some actions along with it too. So backing up and moving around. And some squish is a hug. So that's a fave. If you come to a Baby and Me class, you can hear the tune. I don't think I'm going to sing it today, but the Where is Baby tune is Are You Sleeping, like Fair for a Jaka. And this one is great for object permanence. The peekaboo is a common game. The song is just a way to make it even more I don't know, like not necessarily fun. It's fun either way, but just even more words to it, right? Like you're teaching them even more by doing it with more words. The Wake Up Feet song is one that teaches lots of body parts, right? You can put in all the different body parts, and it's a fun way to start the day, I think, is like just being like, wake up feet, wake up feet, wake up feet, and wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. We also tend to, in Baby and Me, instead of say wiggle, say tickle for some of the time, like especially when we're doing tummies waking up, then that's a great one to tickle. It's just a great way to start learning body parts. And In and Out the Window is one that teaches some rhythm as well as position. So vocabulary of in and out. You can absolutely also sing this song up and down or something like that. Substitute in different vocabulary words for positions in space so that they start understanding those spatial concepts. And it's a nice and sweet song, like going in and out the window, nice and slow and steady. So I do have some book recommendations, even though I didn't bring any exact how to teach reading sort of recommendations. I did bring some board books that I thought would be great ones for supporting baby milestones, and then a couple other pages about concepts and some faves. So this one has the first Laugh, Welcome Baby book that is a Navajo story. It's a tradition for there to be kind of a gathering to try to get the baby to laugh, so that everybody can celebrate the first laugh together. It usually takes place around the time that a baby's laugh would naturally happen. And it's just a sweet story to celebrate laughter and new babies. Babies Firsts is a book that sort of talks about a lot of different things, like even teething. It talks about first steps, crawling, first words, all these things. It's just a general celebration of firsts that happen within the first year of life, and it ends with a birthday party. So I think that the illustrations in this are really sweet. You get to see a lot of different types of babies doing a lot of different things, and it's colorful with great bold outlines, as you can see. So it attracts babies' attention, I think. The Potty Time with Pete the Kitty. It's a lift the flap, so great interaction. It also is great to start thinking about potty training even before it's time to, so that they can start being interested in it. If they don't have any inclination to want to sit on the potty, that makes things a lot harder down the road. So if we can read about characters that they like doing potty time, and hopefully that will make them want to do some potty time themselves. The Yummy and Yucky book is one that I think is really sweet for when babies are first learning to eat solids. It does show babies eating things like spaghetti and that sort of thing, but it also shows them like eating crayons and being like, that's yucky. So it's teaching opposites a little bit. And it's also teaching a little bit of what they should eat and what they shouldn't eat. And that big expressive baby face is really fun to look at. Baby Parade is a book that shows a lot of babies all doing different things, like crawling and walking and waving. And as you can see, they are all wearing different colors. So you practiced labeling colors in this book as well. Every page that you turn, it's like the red onesie or something like that that is called out as part of the text. The Leo Sleep Tight book is a great one for babies starting to have a nighttime routine. It goes through Leo's slow night routine, and it also includes some things about the five senses. So, you know, touch, taste, hearing, sight. What didn't I say yet? I guess smell. Yeah, there we go. So that is Leo Sleep Tight. I love the series about Leo, as well as Lola that Anna McQuinn writes. You can find them in the picture book section as well as the board book section. They're a really sweet sibling duo. Global Baby Playtime is a book that I think is a really fun way to just see all the different ways babies can play. And as we talked about, babies love seeing other babies' faces, and this one really gets up close to a lot of different babies and making a lot of different types of expressions. So Global Baby Playtime, I would recommend if your baby likes to see other babies' faces, which most babies do. So the 21st words in 20 languages is, it's a lot of language, but it is all really simple words. And if you want your baby to learn some other languages, it's a fun one. So it's more the milestone of just those first words that we're talking about here. I mean, there's no guarantee what exactly your baby's first words are, but this book does include quite a few that are typical first words. Books that help teach early learning concepts. I just pulled out 4 here. Let's start with the ABC one because we had a question about ABCs. So this one is a great board book for learning the ABCs, ABC baby signs. So it will show all the letters of the ABCs, and it will also teach some baby signs that go with them. So, like the thing like more, that's one we use a lot around here, is we say more. And that other things like please. There you'll see a lot of baby sign in our story time classes now and then. So it's different than typical American Sign Language because it's altered a little bit to be easy for baby hands, but it's really helpful sometimes when babies are having a hard time communicating before they have their full capacity to use their words. And we have Maisie's Town next to that. That one is great for learning some more first words, but it's also learning about their environment. There's other Maisie's books that are great board books that have other things like around the house or out in the park, like a lot of first words of things that are just everyday objects. We have our Mary Had a Little Lamb book that, I love familiar stories for babies, and this is familiar to, I think, a lot of us that grew up in the American school system, is the Mary Had a Little Lamb song. If you want to practice colors with your baby, this is also meant for that. They have all the colors in this book, and as you can tell, it's really fun for babies to look at with those great big eyes and really colorful pictures. I would recommend that one greatly. And we have our shapes book as well. Shapes is a concept that you need for you to eventually learn how to distinguish between letters and also make letters. It's like know that there are differences between shapes and be able to identify those differences. That will lead you to be able to identify the differences between letters. And shapes is a little easier than letters, so starting with shapes can then lead to learning your letters. This one's also meant to be interactive because it's trace the shapes. So using those little fingers to trace those shapes and have that physical learning too. So we talked earlier about the fact that baby's vision is just developing and you don't really have full color vision until around 5 months. So I did pull out some of the books in our collection that are meant for this purpose of babies who can't see all the colors yet. The animals book in the top left and the animals book on the bottom right are the exception. They are more colorful, but I just think those ones are really visually interesting. So I think that they're still worth giving a shot to all babies. The one on the top left is also really texturally interesting. Everything kind of has different raised or lowered, spongy also texture to a lot of them. So that's fun to feel. But it's different colors, bold, and I think once your baby has colored vision, they'll be really interested in that book. Black cat, white cat is much more for, before they hit that 5-month mark. But if your baby loves cats, they would love this book anyway. It's just kind of fun to see the white cat in the black and the black cat in the white backgrounds and see what they get up to. The Hello My World is a great one for learning some vocabulary about your world, but it's also, as you can tell, high contrast, easy for baby to see. And Baby Sees First Colors, big bold cat again, and red, white, and black, easy for baby to follow along and look at everything. Our What Is That board book is just a few, random objects, but generally kind of familiar objects that are just outlines. So I think that they're all really visually interesting. A mobile is on the cover, and that is an object that is really meant to be visually interesting. Even when you just hang it in your baby's crib, it's something for them to be visually stimulated by. And so that this book by Tana Hoban is really visually stimulating for young babies. I would recommend it. Babies Love Nature. I think that this one is a little bit more geared for adults who want to show off beautiful nature pictures to their babies. But, you know, it is black and white, so your baby will be able to see it. And it is cute. Our Follow Me book is a baby Montessori book. It's meant to be pretty interactive. You can trace along the line and see what happens. This hedgehog is trying to make its way to the apple, right? And this is also high contrast, but they do, as you can see in the bottom right corner, say it's great for up to 12-month-olds because it's really interactive and fun. Our Paper Peak Animals book is one that I think is great for a lot of ages. Honestly, even a preschooler, I think, would find this one interesting because it has so many little tiny objects to look at. Those little tiny penguins that you can see within the big penguin is one example. But you can learn about a lot of different animals in this book and colors. And it's fun to just turn the page and peek inside. Sort of lift the flap style in a way, but a little different. So I just wanted to spotlight a few books that are a little newer because we typically have a lot of favorites that we grew up with. So these are not necessarily so recent as like they just came out this year, but they are recent in that I don't think that they would have been part of any of our childhoods. The Mama Needs a Minute, I believe this one came out around 2019. Can it really have been that long ago? It is about a young mom, very modern looking mom, right? And you see her going about her day and sometimes needing a minute, right? Like if she's in the shower or shaving her legs, she needs a minute. So it's a great book for seeing their own world if they have a mama. And it's one for teaching a little bit of a lesson of sometimes being a little patient and understanding that this is part of the relationship with your mom, is that sometimes she's with you and sometimes she isn't, and learning a little bit of that object permanence. And it's a rhyming text, so it flows really well. It's really sweet. And then we have our Babies and Kitties book that I would recommend. It's just super, super, super cute. If you're a cat person, especially, but if you're a dog person, there is actually like a sister title to this that's Babies with Puppies. So if you're a puppy person, you have your choice too. It's just, you get up close and personal with these photos to baby faces and kitten faces, and very interesting visually to a baby. And low plot like babies like, so would recommend. The Daddy book by Todd Parr. I think that Todd Parr is an all-star children's writer. He always has these big, colorful, bold illustrations, great for babies and toddlers. And he teaches about basic concepts, transportation, like daddy here, siblings, mamas, even friendships. You'll find books about a lot of different social concepts, as well as just concepts in general that young children need to learn, by Todd Parr. And the illustrations are always really fun to look at, really colorful. The I'll Be a Chicken Too book. I think that this one is just so cute and different from what you usually see in board books. Just because it's like not like a lot of plot, but a little bit more happening. They're playing together and they're going from pretending to be one type of animal to another. And the caregiver and the child's dynamic is just super sweet. And there's a lot of different animals to learn about. The Look Twice book is one that I think has really sweet interactive illustrations. So you are going to basically see a scene and then turn the page and see that same scene, but notice something new. So maybe there was a ladybug behind this other thing, and then you see it once you turn the page. So you are looking twice at each sort of setting. And it's a lot of different animals again, which are really a lot to learn when it comes to animals. There's a lot of animals in this world. The Rumble Rumble Dinosaur book. I mean, I think why not get the love for dinosaurs going really young? There's a lot of dinosaur love amongst toddlers, but babies need dinosaurs too. So this one is easy to sing along to the tune of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And as we talked about, songs are a great way to get babies' attention, to slow down words for them. So I love that about it. And I love that it has these colorful, bold pictures too. The bath time physics one, I mean, the babies that are pictured in this book are so sweet. And I think they're making a lot of different expressions, and babies can look at those faces, but it's also really just a really fun concept to start teaching about physics using bath time. I mean, buoyancy and gravity and all these different things that you don't typically learn until like mid-elementary school, some of them even further on. Like you can start talking about them as part of bath time, and it's really just a fun way to think about it and start incorporating learning about concepts while playing. That is not necessarily something that like the baby is going to say, oh, I now understand buoyancy after this book, but it is going to get, I think, caregivers to start thinking about how everyday activities can teach about even bigger concepts. So I think if you share this book with babies, you'll mostly get some fun repetitive moments. It has mostly like asides in it with some descriptions of the science, but there is some repetitive fun to say text that babies will get a kick out of, as well as the pictures. The Little Chicks by Tori Gummy is a bit more of a classic. This author has been around for a long time, but I don't think I've seen it in board book form for very long. And it's a great one for learning about attachment and being able to explore a little away from your caregiver and then come back and be comforted. So I think it's super sweet for that reason, but I also just love their illustration style. It's just very much their own, but also it reminds me of like a little bit of a childlike way of illustrating. So love it. We're reaching our time, but I just want to give everybody a chance to put any final comments in. And I want to also remind people that Raising a Reader is monthly. It's never necessarily too soon to start 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten program. It is meant to be kind of a motivational thing for both caregivers and the child to be able to track the books that they've been reading. And you can come in and get started at the library whenever you want, just by picking up a tracking sheet from us. The book match program is something that you can put a form through our website in for. If you are feeling overwhelmed at home, but you need 20 more board books, you just quickly tell us like, hey, I want board books and I want them to be about like colors and the alphabet and shapes, or, and we'll just grab you 20 of those. We might also throw in a couple that we think are just great for your family. We have any recs for books for parents to read. Oh no, wait, that's one we already saw. Oh, just thank you. Thank you for coming. Okay, it is 7:01 and I am so happy that everybody joined. I will be at the library tomorrow. So if you want to drop in and ask me anything that I didn't address today, I'll probably be around the Central Library. Thanks for coming, everybody. Bye.